I can remember the first time I watched Akira. I knew it, of course. I mean, anyone that considers themselves a movie buff or an anime fan at the very least knows of Akira and how amazing it apparently is. So, one night, I was just chilling, watching Rick and Morty, for I am an intellectual, and I realised that the whole first episode of Season 4 was a parody of Akira. My first thought was about how far this movie has reached and ingrained itself into pop culture, from Japan all the way to the West and the rest of the world, in a time where anime was barely known outside of Japan. So that same night, I thought, screw it, I guess I'm watching Akira. While setting up the movie, I thought, how good can this movie actually be? I mean, sure it's popular, but then again, Drake's popular and I don't exactly love his music. I definitely had my doubts about it at first, and contrastingly my hope. I mean, I love a lot of anime from the 80s. My Neighbor Totoro, Grave of the Fireflies, Fist of the North Star, Dragon Ball. But then I thought, when Akira first saw release in the US, a lot of people were far more skeptical than I was, as to many, anime was basically unheard of. Whereas I was simply skeptical on whether it was going to be a good movie or not, the West was skeptical due to it being a completely different form of media to what they had ever seen before. An animation style completely unique to the Japanese, full of questionable imagery, hyper-violence, overly sexual content, and overall very boundary-defying content. But how did this all come to be? Anime was relatively new, even in Japan. Thankfully, animators and studios saw the potential of this art form, to get away from the physical boundaries of what is possible and push into what could be without conforming to any specific genre, age demographic, target audience, and especially what anyone thought that anime should be. Due to this exploratory attitude, the now dubbed golden age of anime gave us pieces that were heavily experimental, adult, beautiful, and quite frankly just freaking awesome. And all of this manifested in the form of Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira. Needless to say that when I watched Akira, I understood from the very first shot that I was in for something special. And within the first scene, I was hooked. And I can only imagine how the people that watched this for the first time in 1988, who hadn't seen anything to even do with anime, reacted. Akira takes place in a beautifully crafted Neo-Tokyo, rebuilt after its destruction by a cataclysmic nuclear-like explosion that we see in the first shot of the film, that devastated the city and apparently resulted in World War III. Whilst we see this now amazing, bright, vibrant city off in the distance, the film serves as a constant reminder that the scars of mass destruction and death, decades before, are still felt by the city and its people. Scenes of corruption and chaos are woven throughout the film to express this. Frequent riots in the streets, mass protests and biker gangs run rampant. These displays of chaos are never more prominent than from the point of view of our protagonists, Kaneda and Tetsuo, in the neglected areas of the city. From a young age, our protagonists were alone, and thus left them to develop into delinquents in the city that gave little opportunity to its youth. They become members of a biker gang, and their ideas of a good time seem to be women, drugs, and bikes. They get into trouble with law enforcement a lot, and are directly exposed to the dark parts of life. They live this life of violence and gang war displayed in the first part of the movie, that includes the sickest chase scene in all of anime, that really highlights the beauty of the animation in this movie. But more on that later. As the chase unfolds, we end with Tetsuo unexpectedly crashing into a mysterious child, which causes him to be taken away by government officials, to be examined and tested on. Kaneda tries to save his friend from a secret government project. He battles government activists, greedy politicians, irresponsible scientists, and a powerful military leader, until Tetsuo's supernatural powers suddenly manifest and he goes on a telekinetic rampage leading to an epic and emotional climax. Now, the plot sounds insane, I know, and it is, but in a very good way. Akira carries many themes within its story. Themes of destruction, how people are affected by that destruction, the nature of humans and their want for power. And it's clear to anyone that these themes are deeply rooted within the 1945 bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this is probably one of the reasons why this film hits so hard, and why it hasn't lost its relevancy. A very real, very awful event, covered over by beautiful animation, conveying themes of moving on and rebuilding, heavily parallel to our own world, and especially to the Japanese culture. Therefore, anyone can watch Akira and love it. because it's simply a dramatised reflection of real-life events spiced up with awesome bikes, laser guns, telekinetic powers, and one tight aesthetic. Everything this film tries to portray to the audience is largely conveyed and complemented by how damn gorgeous this film looks. I'm of course now talking about the animation. Being the creation of 7 different entertainment studios, Akira had a substantial budget of anywhere between 8 and 11 billion yen, and it is more than obvious when watching the film, as it is visually breathtaking. Even by today's standards, the animation still holds up. Akira was animated in 1s and 2s, meaning the film was animated at 12 and 24 frames per second, so the film flows like liquid on the screen, and it's so clear the outstanding effort the animators went to in order to make this masterpiece come to life, to the point where you can almost see the yen being thrown at it. So much in fact that it far surpassed the beloved Studio Ghibli's animation, and quite frankly any animation that had been seen up until that point. It's not just the frame rate, however, that makes Akira so visually impressive. The sheer skill of the artists give every frame and every scene incredible depth, immersing you into the world where no sequence feels half done. Everything has its place, and the beauty is present in every single frame, all of which that are brought to life with the incredible use of colours. Akira was so unique and ahead of its time that 50 colours of the 327 that were used were created just for the film. All you have to do is watch Akira, and it's obvious why I'm giving this film's animation so much praise and admiration. Akira has become the golden standard for animators everywhere, and is a perfect example of how people in the 80s came to realise what animation can really do. Create a unique and beautiful world, and fuel it with life. The plot, the animation, the excitement and the timeless nature of this film is why it's had such a big impact on film and popular culture, and why it's had such a huge cult following for so long. Akira single-handedly skyrocketed the anime industry to places it had never seen before. The Western world at the time of Akira's release was widely oblivious to the existence of Japanese anime. By 1990, the movie spread to the US. Most people watched it on bootleg videocassette tapes, caught an occasional TV airing or screening, or rented it from some place like Blockbuster. RIP. As more and more people recommended the movie to friends and family and traded it around college campuses, its popularity grew, and so did its fans' hunger for something similar. From there, Akira aficionados sought out more of the anime that was available to them, including Fist of the North Star, Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, Dirty Pair, and Bubblegum Crisis. Many of those 90s fans are still following anime to this day. Akira managed to break boundaries that have never been broken before, and force the fact that anime was here, and it was here to stay. Ever since, anime has become a worldwide phenomenon. Otaku culture has boomed, especially in recent years. Countless anime shows and movies, with conventions, forums, YouTube channels, websites, merchandise and memes dedicated to those shows. Anime is everywhere, and quite frankly, it's just inescapable. Personally, I'm so thankful to Akira for helping to popularize anime across the globe, so an impressionable 12-year-old me could experience so many different adventures and fall in love with so many shows that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Anime has touched the hearts of millions like myself, and it's nice to see it's become more commonplace in society. And Akira is one of those films that has its place in many areas of the world of entertainment and in many people's hearts. For instance, Kanye West. Yeezy. Kanye is a clear example of an Akira fanboy. He gives the film nothing but love, and he has stated it to be his favourite film on multiple occasions. In fact, the video for his hit Stronger is heavily inspired from scenes of Akira, with some of the scenes being more of a live-action Akira that I could currently hope for. Please just make the live-action remake, someone, for the love of God. Another reference that I quite like is one I've already mentioned, the Akira-inspired episode in Rick and Morty, which, looking back, is a lot funnier now that I get the references, and many other pieces of media pull inspiration from Akira, such as Stranger Things' L, who is very reminiscent of Tetsuo and the other powerful children being tested on by a secret organization in Akira. There are also many different references and tips of the hat, so to speak, to Akira, especially its bike chase scenes and the scene from Tetsuo's transformation. I mean, when Supreme puts your movie on a t-shirt, you know you've gone big. Akira isn't just a movie. It's the genesis of a genre and the beginning of the anime industry that we know today. Katsuhiro Otomo's landmark cyberpunk classic obliterated boundaries of Japanese animation and forced the world to look into the future. Akira's arrival shattered traditional thinking, creating space for movies like The Matrix to be dreamed into brutal reality. Without Kaneda and Tetsuo, without espers and psionic assassins, without that badass motorcycle, our world would be a far less exciting place to exist. But the manga became the movie, and the movie became a phenomenon, and the world took notice. Now Akira is everywhere. If you can't see it in the streets, if you can't feel it crawling around inside your brain, then you are clearly yet to watch it. What are you waiting for? Between another, I'll give you that news.